welcome to the Hey You Guys podcast. We're your hosts, Rob and Liam, and it's been a long time coming. I say long time coming, 5 episodes, but we finally covered Die Hard. My favorite.
It is a long time, isn't it?
Yeah,
I would say 5 episodes is a long ass time to get to fucking Die Hard of all things. Like the quintessential 80s movie, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's the starting off from the top, I guess. It's the film that set its own path in regards to. Everything after that was Die Hard on a plane, Die Hard on a train.
Yeah. And it still is to this day. Like 100%. Like it just hasn't been topped. In a similar, and funny enough, this is already our second John McTiernan film.
Yes.
And similar to his other film, which we've already done, was episode 2, Predator. I would say these are 2 films which haven't been bested. Like, you say, oh, it's kind of like Predator, or like you say, it's Die Hard on a plane. And basically what it means is it's like Die Hard, but it's not as fucking good. Yeah. And it never is. It never is.
I was in the shop the other day and I saw a film. I can't remember the title of the film, but I just remember they always have those little taglines on the bottom, like the reviewers say or something. And this one was Die Hard on steroids.
Yeah.
And you're looking at it and you're thinking, it's Sean Patrick Flannery.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this film is not Die Hard on steroids.
Die Hard on steroids. It's such lazy writing to say it's Die Hard on steroids. I mean, I certain films do have a certain Die Hardness in terms of like Die Hard's, like, again, I keep referring back to Predator. One thing they have in common is that they're really lean movies. They get to the point super quick. It was one of the things rewatching it actually was like, you're getting into the action really quick in this film. And even though there aren't a ton of action scenes, in terms of like the flow of the movie, there's not tons of exposition. It's just straight in and straight to the races. And the only films which are close and literally copy the template almost perfectly, I suppose, are stuff like maybe The Raid and Dread, in so much that they're just setting a tall building. But they actually refine it even further in so much that you just need to get to the top of the tall building. There's no complications on which floor you're on. You're just making your way. Right, all the bad guys are just on the top floor. You need to get there. That's it. And in fairness, I would say they're the only 2 films which I think have come close to matching the template. Because I love The Raid and I love Dread as well. And in fact, I mean, obviously, we're a bit too young to have seen this in the cinema. The only film I can imagine having the same kind of impact as this might have had for me if I'd seen it in '88 is The Raid. Like when I went to see that was the first time I went to see a movie in the cinema. It was such a pleasant surprise. And I came out and I was like, man, this might be in the same category as Die Hard. Like it's that good, but there are so few.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get me wrong though. I love The Raid and I love Dread. And I love the premise that they're on, but they are nothing compared to Die Hard in my eyes.
They're not.
The action is more this era for The Raid and Die Hard. Do you know what I mean? The Raid and
The Raid is a better action, a pure action movie, in so much that the choreography of The Raid may never be. It might be the best choreography I've ever seen. You know, people will say its sequel might have matched it, but it's a messier film. But as an actual overall movie, no, The Raid isn't in the same league as Die Hard because The Raid doesn't have John McClane. It doesn't have top tier Bruce Willis in the lead. It doesn't have Hans Gruber, and those are the difference makers. Like this is an exceptional action movie elevated to gold standard levels by the cast.
This film feels like it comes out of nowhere. It starts off. You've got this copper who's just come to see his estranged wife, and they've already laid the groundwork just from that conversation with Argyle about how flawed he is. He didn't even believe his wife was going to make it in the corporate world, so why bother packing up and moving? This guy, I guess, your typical 80s chauvinist in that way. Oh, no, she'll come running back to me. Why do I need to pack up and move and everything?
Yeah.
So you're already set in the flawed character, and then how
they do that non-stop as well. It's not just the marriage thing. They go to such lengths to establish the fact that he's this flawed, salt of the earth guy. You think, and sorry to ruin your train of thought there, but it's you've got to think most 80s action movies, heroes at the time. You think we've talked about already, Commando. His introduction is him just carrying a fucking tree.
Yeah.
In Predator, it's what's the first thing he does? Is just have an arm wrestle. It's just all about uber masculinity. And around the same time, you've got John McClane who comes in. The first scene they establish the fact that he's afraid of flying. There's no reason. It's just to let you know that he's just a normal dude. And then it's like, even when he gets to like the actual plaza, the building, it's like he's having like a pit wash. He's having like a horse bath in his room, and there's just no need for it. You just can't imagine that scene existing in a Stallone film or a fucking Schwarzenegger movie, you know?
When you get back to the airport, I mean, again, quintessential 80s, smoking in an airport, man.
Totally.
I saw that.
There's so many little 80s nods. Yeah. It's like he's carrying a gun on the plane. I don't care if you're a cop. That's never happening. Smoking in the airport. The immediate introduction of a sexually aggressive male colleague in the workplace in the slimiest character of all time in Harry Ellis. It's like, it's all just super 80s, but in the best possible way. But all the smoking does come, even when he's just smoking in the building. I'm like, dude, you're going to give away your position. Smoking stinks. Someone's going to fucking notice. But yeah, sorry, dude. I totally...
No. I mean, yeah. Everything about this film from the moment I watched it, and I watched it relatively young. I was probably 7 when I watched this.
First, I mentioned on previous podcasts, it was the first 18 movie I ever watched. Yeah. It was this.
So I'm running around at 7 years age screaming yippee-ki-yay.
Oh, yippee-ki-yay.
I don't think I ever finished the sentence.
Maybe perhaps you saw it on like ITV3 or something. Oh, ITV3. This is like 1980s. Yeah. On ITV when they used to like dub all the swearing, where it's like yippee-ki-yay Mother Hubbard or something ridiculous like that.
I always remember the one is when he first meets Hans. I always remember that dub because it was terrible. Because when he goes, "Oops, no bullets," and he goes, "Do you think I'm fucking stupid, Hans?" He said.
Oh yeah.
I always remember the ITV dub is, "Do you think I'm really stupid, Hans?" Like, and
they were always so clumsy. Yeah, those 7-8 p.m. kind of dubs on ITV, BBC, they were all horrendous, man. So bad.
This is like everything with this film, like talking about the flawed character and everything. And it was like, I don't remember an action film like where the guy's running around barefoot. Either.
Yeah, well, the weird thing is John McClane is like the complete inverse of most action heroes. You think of like most action heroes in the 80s, they were like super buff, super masculine. And then as you moved into the 90s and the 2000s, they became a little bit more emotional, like lean, I don't know, like, you know, they weren't so outwardly masculine. Whereas with John McClane, it's the opposite. It's like in the 80s, he was this really vulnerable character, as you say, down to the fact that he didn't have any shoes on, even the vest, which has become iconic. But I think initially it was supposed to represent him as being vulnerable. Like he's half dressed and he's forced into this position. I don't think it's, usually when you get a guy in the 80s and he's wearing a vest, it's to show off. In this, I don't get that vibe at all. I think it's very much to kind of sell him as being, he's tough, but he's this vulnerable, everyday human being.
He's literally just a detective that's thrown into the wrong place at the wrong time.
And that's true of Die Hard 1. It's true of Die Hard 2, even of Die Hard 3, which I've got a real soft spot for. I love Die Hard 3.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, Die Hard 4, it's like suddenly goes Fast and the Furious. He becomes
a
something more akin to, a superhero. He becomes like the cliched take of what people think John McClane is, but really never was. And by Die Hard 5, when he's throwing out horrendous fucking catchphrases and driving, a tank through fucking Moscow, he's literally just become this odd caricature. Like he becomes the 80s character that people thought he was, but totally never was. It's a really strange trajectory for the character.
I don't understand what you're saying. Die Hard 5?
Rumor has it it's a film. Die Hard 5, man. Like, let me be clear. Die Hard 4, to me, sits in the same world as, say, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like, I know a lot of people despise Crystal Skull. I actually think Crystal Skull is poor by comparison, but it's got some good stuff in it. It's got a handful of cool scenes. And I think that is, and more importantly, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, whatever you say about the film, Indiana Jones still feels like Indiana Jones. Die Hard 4, even though he's a little bit superhero, to me, it's still just about feels like John McClane. It's got some cool action sequences. I like Timothy Olyphant in it. I don't love it. It's the fourth weakest film quite comfortably, but it still feels like Die Hard to me. Whereas Die Hard 5 is so far and away. It's so the fucking made for straight to video version. It just upsets me.
For me, Die Hard 4 is watchable. It is serviceable, especially like as a John McClane vehicle. But 1, 2, and 3 are where it stands for me. And then I could watch 4. Like I said, I don't even own 5, and I will never own
100%. It's bad.
Oh, yeah. But going back to the nostalgia for this, the nostalgia like aside for this film, it just has everything that you want in a film. Like like you said, you had the uber macho action men, and then you had this flawed guy who's doing it basically just to save the woman he loves, and that's all he's doing. As much as he thought that she would come and run back to it, he literally just wants to save Holly.
And even that, I never get the impression he's really got a plan. He is and that's again one of the things that make him so endearing and make him stand out, especially at the time. Excuse me. Is that all of his actions are reactionary. He is constantly, in the first instance, I think he's just trying to survive. And you can see he's totally winging it. I don't think he's got some grand plan of I've got to save all the hostages. He's like, I've got to do something because I'm a cop, but I don't know what the fuck to do. And every single, there are some impressive action scenes. Obviously, he jumps off a building, all these other things. God, excuse me. But you notice watching it again, he's only doing these things because he absolutely has to. At no point does he think, I'm going to jump off this building because it's badass. He's like, fuck, if I don't jump off this building, I'm going to die. And that's it.
From the beginning. When he first calls in the fire department, he's calling, he's like, I'll kiss your fucking Dalmatian if you,
what is up with that line?
And then they'll go, but then when Al finally, and we'll get to Al and we'll get to the introduction of him and stuff, but when the coppers finally know something's going on and they all set up, you see him happy to just sit down under the window, pop a cigarette in his mouth, and just let them get on with it. And he literally And then it was only when he saw the lights come on, he was like, all right, I've told you about these guys. What are you doing trying to come in?
Yeah. He's just he wants them to show up and do a professional job. And we will get to how utterly incompetent every single member of law enforcement is in this film, arguably other than Al and John McClane, obviously.
My one question about Al before you go on, why is a desk officer in a black and white?
It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
If he's just going home with his 900 Twinkies under his arm, why is he
going back in that car?
Cruiser? But why is he in a police cruiser?
I don't know. It's a bit of a stretch, but it just it wouldn't look right if he was in a Honda Civic or something like that. I mean, well, while we're on that scene, I'm just going to ask you a question. Right, so he pushes the body out the window. So Al shows up. They convince him that nothing's going on. He's going to leave, yeah?
Yeah.
So John McClane pushes a body out the window, which is awesome, by the way. It looks really cool. Goes through the windscreen. And then people start shooting at the car. Is that John McClane or is that someone else?
It's poor editing. And it took me a while to realize this, right? But it's poor editing on their part. So he pushes... So what people see, and what I've had this conversation many times before... John McClane pushes chucks Marco or Carlos or whoever out the window.
One of the non-events, yeah.
Chucks him out the window. Al starts getting shot at, and then you get welcome to the party, pal. So that editing is John McClane.
It looks like John.
Yeah.
Which I was watching again. I was like, dude, you're taking a big chance there. You could easily kill that cop.
But if you look at the gun that does the shooting, it's the gun that the weird mulleted guy who had the rocket launcher is holding.
Yeah. Because it's on the third floor. The shooting's coming from. And John McClane's much higher. But like you said, the way it cuts back to him.
That's the question of the editing. Is if that mulleted guy is doing the shooting, Hans didn't want you to do the shooting. Yeah, I mean, he wanted the cops to come at some point. Obviously, that was part of the plan.
Yeah.
But it was like even the conversation that they're having at the moment, where they're saying, we don't want him to just send the copper away. We don't want him to know what's going on. Or anything. So that guy took it upon himself to shoot Al.
Yeah, he's just seen the body go down. He's like, it's out of the bag now. Let's fucking shoot him.
Yeah.
And it's a weird scene. But I mean, I guess is it just an excuse for Al to do that whole reverse car thing, which is all very clumsy, by the way. But I guess he is being shot at, so I'll give him the benefit.
It is poor editing. But I wonder as well, is that that was a sloppy way to get, what was his name? Thornburg? No, what was it? The reporter guy.
The slimy reporter guy. Yeah, the guy who's always the slimy reporter. He's always the slimy guy because he's the slimy guy in Ghostbusters as well, isn't he?
Yeah. What's his name in Ghostbusters? Oh, I can't remember. Thornburg. His name was Thornburg in this, but he was
Walter Peck. Walter Peck.
Yeah. But I would like, because as you got Al Reverse and he's doing the old CB radio, I'm under fire kind of thing, and then that's how Thornburg gets into it. And while we're talking about Thornburg and him in the news studio, we've got to say hello to Mary Ellen Trainor once again.
See, since you've mentioned it, I'm just like, she's in everything. She is in everything from the 80s. And it's not just her. Like, you get these people who just keep showing up. It's like the FBI agents. What's his name? He was in the Goonies.
Robert Davi.
Well.
Yeah.
He's one of the Fratellis.
Do you know who...
Yeah. Like, all these people who just keep popping up.
Do you know who Mary Ellen Trainor was married to? I only found out.
Robert Zemeckis, I think it was.
Yeah, Robert Zemeckis.
Yeah, Robert Zemeckis, sorry, I got the pronunciation wrong. But yeah, she is bizarre because she's in like every movie I grew up with, and I just never noticed it. Like, I knew she was in these movies, but it just never clicked in my head that she was in fucking all of them. Those scenes are weird, actually. It's like, there's a spell in this film when the police show up, and obviously John McTiernan doesn't have the highest, regard for cops and law enforcement. That's very clear throughout. There's a spell when what's his name from the Breakfast Club,
Dwayne Robinson in this, isn't he?
Yeah, like he shows up, and there's a spell when this film turns into like a bit of a comedy. Like, I know for other parts you have like the quips and stuff from Bruce Willis, but there's a period when it's like those two show up and they've got this weird Agent Johnson back and forth thing. No, the other one, we're not related.
Did you know
all this weird shit?
Did you notice how Dwayne Robinson actually appeared on the scene as well?
No.
Oh my God. So they're all talking, and then he comes speeding through in his car. He's in the back seat of the car. Mm-hmm. The car comes speeding through. I don't think the car's even come to a stop. And he jumps out of the car with his badge in hand, like he's already taken it out of his pocket.
Yeah.
And he jumps out of the car while the car's still moving. Going, right, who's talking to him? Like, he just wants power. And he's like, right, I'm taking charge and stuff. And oh my God, when
they are a comedy duo, and in that period as well, like Rick DeCommon shows up, the guy from the Burbs and stuff.
I was going to mention him.
He has this weird little comedic moment where they're asking him to cut the power and everything. Then when it cuts back to the studio, there's this very almost like Cronenbergian satirical moment where she's doing an interview with some kind of intellectual, and he's showing his book, and it's called Hostage, Terrorist, Hostage. And it even has a moment with the other anchor where he goes about, Helsinki, that's in Sweden. And the guy just looks like, no, Finland. And it's just him looking dopey. And there's no reason for that bit to be in there. And it feels almost like it's from a different movie. But as I said, with the cops, and in that, there's like a 15, 20-minute section there where the film almost kind of inches into broad comedy. And I'd never really noticed it before. It's quite bizarre, but still totally enjoyable. But I'm not sure if it sits with the rest of the film, but hey-ho.
When the terrorists, the robbers, show up, I mean, you can't really call them terrorists when you find out why they're there. They had pretty much every 80s stereotype villain you'd want. You had
100%.
You had the smooth German talker in his nice fancy suits, and then you had
German-ish, just to be
German-ish, yes.
As good as Alan Rickman is in this film, both his German and his American accents are absolute dog shit. Just to be 100% clear, they're horrendous. The reason
Hans and John McClane met was because they found out that Alan Rickman could do an American accent.
Well, supposedly John McClane hated his American accent though. And he was just like, this is like a conflicting thing I've read, where I always thought it was because of that. Yeah. But supposedly he did 3 takes, and supposedly John McTiernan said, listen, he keeps trying to do an American accent, but all I can hear is his English accent. And they just kind of rushed through it. But I think it's a terrible American accent, personally.
It's not the best. It's
fun. It's a fun scene, but it's terrible. But no, I totally agree with you. Like, one of the good things they do with the bad guys is that they make sure that there's enough superfluous bad guys who they spend no time on just to be cannon fodder. Although one of them is Vigo from Ghostbusters 2, which I've never noticed before.
It is, yeah.
It totally is. The guy with the ponytail. He has like a really innocuous... He dies when John McClane drops the C4 down the lift shaft. He's just kind of standing nearby. But what they do is they make
the rocket launcher, the drop.
Yeah, the rocket launcher, yeah. But like you say, what they do is, so say you got like 12 guys, essentially, they establish that 8 of them are just cannon fodder straight away. But then they make 4 really memorable characters to make sure that you have those big moments.
The 2 for me, like, obviously you had the guy who is in every... If you needed a bad Asian guy, you had this guy with the Fu
Yeah. He's memorable just because he's that guy, though. Yeah. The guy from Big Trouble and stuff.
You had basically could have been ripped out of Scarface or Carlito's Way or something like that. The guy in the red Cuban shirt with his shirt open, his gold chain hanging down.
Is he the guy on the table?
No, I always thought that, but no, there was two Cuban guys.
See, I always think those guys are totally forgettable. I just think when I think of it, I think of the black computer dude. I've got his name. Oh, I've got it written down. I shouldn't just say black computer guy, but
Theo.
Theo, because he's just constantly dropping like sports references. The quarterback is toast.
But
when he shows up, he's talking about basketball.
We got to show that he's the intellectual by giving him those glasses.
Glasses. Yeah. He's smart because he wears glasses. But there's him. There's obviously Hans Gruber, Carl's brother. And I'm like, for me, they're the core group, the really memorable ones. I know the other guy hangs around for ages, the guy who's working on the door, who pretends to be American. But I'm like, I actually find him pretty forgettable. He survives longer than I thought he should have, but whatever.
There's the random guy as well. Like when they finally got into the vault and the one bad guy flicks the statue and goes, ooh, and flicks the statue. I never saw him before that moment.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so he's
in there. There are a couple, yeah.
Sorry? And he flicks
There are a couple who just seem to just show up.
And then and then as he's running away, that's when John McClane shoots him, and then he's walking down, and you've got that silhouette. I know we're jumping to the end, but you've got that silhouette of John McClane walking down, holding the gun, just limping. It goes back to the flawed character. This guy did not go through this easy. He is
he gets fucked up.
Yeah, he's so battered, he's bruised,
The great thing is there ever been a better visual representation of ordeal than that vest? Like that vest is white and his trousers are like light grey at the start. By the time he's coming through the end, I mean, it's black. It is black. It's covered in blood and muck and filth. Even his pants are black. Everything, his feet are black and covered in blood.
My wife said to me,
fucked up.
My wife said to me, what the fuck are they breathing if he's come out of that air vent looking like that?
Oh, I don't know, man.
Like he went in there
is a point where I'm like,
just dirty. Yeah. And then he came out and it was green near enough.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, the thing that's a weird thing about this film. It's like you think of like iconic images in movies, and we said before about like Predator and the arm wrestling and stuff. And in this, it's probably John McClane just in an air vent. Like, he's not even in it for very long. He literally gets into the air vent, he crawls a little bit, he has his little quip with the lighter, and then they have like that bit where they're shooting at it, and then it just kind of ends. But when I think of Die Hard, I think most people, if you're going to pick an image that defines Die Hard, it would probably be John McClane hiding in an air duct.
Yeah.
Which is, again, speaks, wonders for the character, I suppose. He's not out there kicking ass, he's hiding for a lot of it. Basically, for a lot of it, he's like kind of caught between wanting to survive and knowing, like, he's on about to do something, but he doesn't quite know what to do because he's in this ridiculous situation. That kind of like, all right, yeah, he's got just enough about him so it doesn't feel ridiculous when he starts fighting against them. But at the same time, he's like, he's never in control of the situation.
No.
And one of the things you see, and again, it felt so much more modern than I was expecting going back to it. The actual fight scenes, like, we're used to, again, the 80s, these guys, like, they punch the bad guys, they go flying, all this other nonsense. The fights in this actually reminded me a lot more of Casino Royale. Like, the fights with Carl's brother, whatever his name is.
When he's
like,
hanging onto the back of him and he's getting thrown around. And
he's fighting with him and he just like accidentally breaks his neck as they fall down the stairs. It isn't some big thing where it's like, oh, John McClane breaks his neck. They just kind of fall down together and he just falls awkwardly. But even like later on when he's fighting Carl, like in the big showdown, it's like he's so desperate. Like the fight, it's so scrappy and he's like, and you can see the way, like, even the way he's talking when he's fighting, there's nothing composed about him. He's like, I'm going to fucking kill you. He's just like losing his shit. He's so desperate.
That fight with Carl, that kind of planted the seed for the John McClane we see throughout all the other films.
That's the first hint.
Because he's beating up Carl, because he's done it, like, he's had a couple of fights before or shoots, and like after he kills that one guy on the the world's weirdest conference table.
Yeah, it is a weird ass table. That zigzag table is bizarre.
How are you going to be able to have a conference on that zigzag? I don't understand.
I don't know how it works.
I mean,
it's great if you.
That table was literally designed just for him to crawl around in before he gets to the end. And he says, like, thanks for the advice. But when he's fighting Cal,
for the advice.
When he's fighting Cal, and he's got him in a headlock. He's running up the stairs, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna cook you, and I'm gonna eat you.
It's bizarre. But like I said, even then, like, he does get his ass whipped a bit, and I mean, we'll get into the whole Carl being indestructible thing in a minute. But one of the things about that table, and it's one of the things that again stood out for me watching it, was just how violent the squibs were. It's like, again, it reminded me of like Cronenbergian kind of like RoboCop, where it's like when he shoots Takagi, you don't just see the blood on the window, you see his brains on the window. And when they get shot, like when he shoots up to the table and he shoots like the inside of his thighs, which for some reason is even more horrible, like it just looks like the skin and everything is just bursting out. Like there's something especially gross about the squibs in this film. Like when they get shot, it just looks horrendous.
I never picked up that Takagi joke before either, when he first meets John McClane, the Pearl Harbor joke.
What's that? Never
picked it up before. So John McClane first meets Takagi, and I had it written down. McClane goes, "You throw quite a party. I didn't realize they celebrated Christmas in Japan." And he went, "Hey, we're flexible. Pearl Harbor didn't work, so we got you a tape decks."
Oh, yeah, totally. I forgot about that.
I never picked up on that before. I was like, wow.
It's weird. I think there was still, like, in the 80s, probably still some, like, anti-Japanese sentiments kind of thing. So, I don't know. Like, some of those jokes are pretty weird and of their time, I guess. But there are some great singers in this. I mean, a lot of them, and again, we have to get to eventually, is, like, Hans Gruber, who has just every line he delivers is just scathing. It's like, what is it? Like, just before he kills him, I could talk about industrialization and men's fashion all day. It's like, that's not a line your average bad guy says.
When he's talking to them all as well, he said, I can't remember the whole line when he's talking to the hostages, but it was like, Takagi didn't understand, so he won't be joining us for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that line makes any sense, but it's still cool. But even, like, the introduction is him it's not like a big speech, just him reading facts about Takagi. But for some odd reason, it just totally lands. Always that last, like, just as Takagi gives in, and father of 3. It's just, there's something about the delivery. And again, we talk about, like, all the pieces, like, coming together. Like, yeah, this is a great action movie. Yeah, brilliantly directed by John McTiernan. You've got an absolute, like, gold standard Bruce Willis. You know, this is the start of his action career, because obviously he's coming off Moonlighting at the time.
Yeah.
But to get, like, Alan Rickman, they're the ones who take a very, very good action film and ostensibly make it, and I don't think this is an outrageous thing to say, possibly the greatest action movie of all time.
In my eyes, it is the greatest action movie of all time.
It's definitely I mean, obviously I picked a couple of weeks ago Predator, but I would say Predator's a very different movie, because Predator, I always think of not the best action movie of all time. I think of it as the best B movie of all time.
Yeah.
Whereas this isn't a B movie at all. It's a bit of a romp most of the times. You know, it is something John McTiernan actually changed from the original, because this is based on a novel, and is actually
No Time to Die.
No Time to Die, and it was actually a sequel to The Detective, where they made a film of it which starred Frank Sinatra. And famously, because of a contractual agreement, they had to offer John McClane to Frank Sinatra. And thank God, I mean, he was 73 at the time, and he did say no. But imagine the different world we'd be in.
We will get into who was offered this before. Obviously, they took.
That's a long ass list. It's basically everyone.
Going back to lines, my favorite line in this whole film, and it's not like, obviously it's a John McClane line. And it's not yippee-ki-yay. It is when because it's the panic in his voice as well as he's trying to do it. Like, he's on top of the building, and he's talking to the police sergeant, and she's going, "Oh, we'll have to come down here and arrest you." And he's like, "Oh, come down and arrest me, or fine, sue me, come down and arrest me," whatever he says.
Yeah.
Whereas when she first comes on, she goes, "Attention, whoever you are. This line is used for emergency services only." He's like, "No fucking shit, lady. Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?"
Yeah, I've got that written down as well.
That is quintessential. Just like, you're panicking. They're all like, everyone knows where you are now because you're broadcasted on the roof, and you've got this woman just on the other end going, "Yeah, are you a prank caller?" And he's like, "I'm calling on an emergency line."
she's the first in line of, as we previously mentioned, the many incompetent law enforcement agents they run to online. But there's like, again, these kind of like lines I'd never really taken any notice of before. But it's like Glass? Who gives a fuck about Glass? And I'm like, is that like purposefully kind of like, you know, considering what happens later with Glass? I'm like, is that on purpose? I don't know, but it's like, even when like Dwayne,
that would be some great.
I like the TV presenter who always gets shit in every film. Is like, I'm not the one who just got butt fucked on live TV, Dwayne. And it even cuts to Argyle laughing, but and Argyle's another weird one. Like, is there any need in Argyle other than like he's quite a nice guy?
Why would you just happily just wait I know, like, you're being nice and you're hoping for a good tip at Christmas, but why would you just randomly wait at an underground parking garage?
All I could think was like, okay, he needs to get to the building. I'm not sure if you need that whole thing with Argyle. I'm like, is it just so he has a limo at the end of the film? And even when he drives out, obviously he does have his little moments when he hits Theo when he's in the truck. But then, considering everything that's going on, you think Carl has just come back from the dead. You know, Al's had to shoot him at the end of the film. And then out of the fucking blue, Argyle just drives up the building in a limo. And all Bruce Willis says to Al, oh, don't worry, Dwayne, he's with me. And like everyone else is just like, he's probably with him. You think, dude, you're about to get gunned the fuck down driving out that movie out of Nakatomi Plaza right now in a limo out of the blue, you know. But hey, he gets away with it. That's Argyle for you. And if anything, he introduced me to one of my favorite Christmas songs. So, you know, there's that as well.
Hey, this is Christmas music.
Well, that's the other thing. I've got to bring it up before we move on.
It's a Christmas film.
In the room. Yeah, all right. Just to be clear, I've gone back and forth on this. I am with you now. Because at first I was like, of course it's a Christmas film. But then somebody made the argument. Then I started kind of leaning towards the idea. It's like, wait a minute. Is it a Christmas film or is it just a film set at Christmas? Because, you know, usually when I think of a quintessential Christmas film, I think it's about Christmas. You know, it's about Santa, whatever. I was like, you know, would this film still work the same if it wasn't set at Christmas? But I'm like, there's too many like nods. You know, there's the music in the car. Yeah. It's a Christmas party, obviously at the end with, you know, a very traditional Christmas song. And funny enough, Bethan said the same thing, because I was making this argument. I was like, you know, could you make the argument that it's just a movie set at Christmas? She goes, but if you're making that argument, then Home Alone isn't a Christmas movie. Home Alone's just a movie set at Christmas as well. It's like, it's a good point. So I did kind of go back and forth on this, but I am firmly in the camp now that this is a Christmas film.
If you look at like Lethal Weapon, to me, that's a movie set at Christmas. That's not a Christmas movie.
Exactly. This is a Christmas movie. It's just about...
It is like, because you get like, I don't know, randomly like the miracle of Christmas and everything. Like he's managed to save everyone, all the hostages and everything like that. Speaking of the hostages, pregnancy drinking.
Yeah, all that.
Like she's oh yeah, do you reckon the baby can handle a bit of champagne? Like, oh yeah, that baby can handle anything.
That totally happened in the 80s. Well, that's what my mum always says. She's like, when I was born, she quit smoking while I was born, and she had loads of problems during pregnancy when I was born. So then for my brother, she was just like, also, I'm just going to smoke. So she smoked all the way through my brother's pregnancy, and he was fine. I mean, you can make arguments for how it's worked out in the long run, of course, but in the immediate, sorry, John, I'm only messing, of course. God, you'll probably listen to this and get very upset, but it's just one of those bizarre things. Like, the idea of somebody like smoking during pregnancy was like, I might or I might not. That was just, I might drink or I might not. You think now, if someone was busting off 20 a day during pregnancy, people would be fucking appalled.
If anyone's looking at you, mind, they can guarantee your mother didn't smoke during pregnancy, because Jesus, it did not stunt your fucking growth.
I didn't start. See, I went through a pretty long phase of smoking, actually, and obviously it was too late. I started too late. It was after the growth spurt. I couldn't reverse what had already happened. You know, it's like I'm still the best part of 6'7". So
before we move on to anything, we really need to talk about Ellis.
We absolutely do. I mean, he might be the slimiest character in movie history, beyond the whole, you know, sexual inappropriateness, like right from the off. They established that early doors that he's a bit of a sexual predator, albeit a really clumsy one. I mean, that whole line, what is it? Hans, Bubby, I'm your white knight. It's just like, dude, it's the word. And I think it's the way he like signs off, essentially. He has the conversation with John McClane, and it's all cheesy and horrible. But then when he hands the microphone back to Hans, he has this goofy smile on his face, which is basically like, don't kill me. And then he just dies. That's the last thing you see is his goofy smile, and then he gets shot in the face.
There's the two, like, when he's talking on the radio and he says, Hans, what is this? What am I, a method actor? Or what is this, TV? This is radio, throw away the gun. But then after he takes 2 barrels, and she goes, what are you doing? She says, I negotiate $1 million deals for breakfast, babe.
Yeah.
And he just gives it, and he waves to the one guy, and he goes, Sprechen Sie talk?
Sprechen Sie talk. Oh, man,
I love how he's trying to assert his dominance over John McClane as well. He's like, show him the watch.
Oh, yeah. He just keeps insisting. It's a Rolex. It's a Rolex.
No big
Again, that all goes back to the whole, like, John McClane just doesn't care. Like, that whole salt of the earth thing. He doesn't care about the Rolex. He immediately puts down the fancy cocktail, which is just not getting on with.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the complete anti-John McClane character. But yeah, as I said, like, that's the great thing about this film, and the great thing about, like, so many of these films we'll look at, the one thing they'll have is, like, a successful ensemble. Like, as much as the leads are very much, obviously, Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman, all these characters have their moments on screen. All of them deliver. You know, every single character is oddly memorable. But, it does, when you think of this film, it does all come back to Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman. And again, I mean, is this the greatest villain in movie history? I mean, in one regard, he's competing with himself, because one of the other greatest movie villains is the Sheriff of Nottingham, who's absolutely fantastic as well. When I think of Alan Rickman,
he's taken the soft-spoken Hans. He doesn't break until right at the end when he yells at Holly, going, "I'm an exceptional thief." He's not breaking then. And then to go to the Sheriff of Nottingham and Robin Hood, and he's literally just dialed it up to 1,000. He is just
what I love about his character as well, it's like as cool as he is, there's always this hint, and obviously it's proved later when everyone starts getting under his skin by saying, wait, you're just a thief, this is just about money. And it's just like, he is a bit of a loser, maybe. There's just like this hint about it, and I don't know, I think he just plays it absolutely perfectly. And he's such a great foil, for Bruce Willis, for John McClane, who's just being the complete opposite. This kind cool, perfectly suited European.
Was this Alan Rickman's first feature film or first American film? I think it was. So
it was first feature film. Yeah, because they spotted him on stage. Again, they looked at other people, but I can't remember the name of the play, but they saw him on stage and were like, this is the guy. And obviously it was. Because although bizarrely, for all the quotes from Alan Rickman in this and in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and whenever I think of Alan Rickman quotes, I always think of Dogma. And like, how many times I'll say it's about, like, don't let me go anywhere near a seafood restaurant, because I will say it every time. What are you going to do? Hit me with that fish? I don't know why that's always the quote that I associate with Alan Rickman.
The one I always get with Alan Rickman is, I'll eat your heart out with a spoon. Why a spoon, cousin? Because it's dull. It'll hurt you, twit.
I mean, he really does go for it in that. And again, you could make an argument that he's in a different film to everyone else in that, but he's all the better for it. But in this, he fits in perfectly. And I mean, he's great. But then, as good as he is as the quote-unquote intellectual kind of bad guy, you still need that physical threat. And like Carl is like the perfect 80s bad guy. Like, he has that vendetta because he kills his brother. So
at that point.
He totally is. And again, the only thing I can compare him to, especially the fight at the end, what it reminds me of is Gary Busey at the end of Lethal Weapon. And not just because he comes back from the dead miraculously and then gets shot by a black guy, which is, exactly the same as what happens in Lethal Weapon. But I don't know, he's just got the look, hasn't he? And the only thing I will say, though, is like, how is he not dead? Because I was really paying attention this time.
So he hung him. He literally hung him.
He hangs him, yeah. Right. They go up to the roof. When the hostages are coming back downstairs,
he's hanging
still hanging.
Yeah. So he's literally under the roof. So if that roof explodes, he should be.
That's the other thing. Yeah. So he's hung him. They prove that he's been hanging there for at least 10 minutes, because when they all come back down after he scares them off, he's still hanging there. So he's been hanging there for a long time. And then, like you say, they blow up the fucking roof. He can't be far off. And yet somehow he still shows up at the end. It makes no sense.
You wonder if the roof blowing up actually dislodged the chain and he landed on the floor. There's some sort of narrative that we haven't seen. But
this is up there with Emperor Palpatine coming back for Star Wars one more time. It's like, Jesus Christ, dude, he's dead.
what they needed instead of Carl, they needed his brother. You know, just him to pull up the shot. You know, and as he's about to shoot John McClane, he's got, now I have a machine gun.
Ho, ho, ho. Yeah. Well, that's another reason it has to. If you've got that line in the movie, it has to be a Christmas movie. But
yeah,
I mean, you said you were going to mention him. Like, how do you actually feel about Al? Because in some respects, like, I love Al, the character, and I think you do need it. Like, he adds that emotional heart, that connection with John McClane. But some of the story, like, it's so melodramatic. It's like that line. It's like, they can teach you everything about being a cop except how to live with a stick. It's like, it's so ridiculously melodramatic.
Was it me as well, or did they handle, like, I know, like, you had John McClane saying he felt like shit after he told him his story about shooting a kid.
Yeah.
Did that whole thing just feel like me talking to you and going, I stubbed my toe?
I don't know. It's somewhere between that and a televanella. That's not a word.
It didn't feel like it had the weight that it should have had. I know maybe time's gone, and I don't know. Mm-hmm. It didn't feel right at watching it again. Like I said, it doesn't take away from this film. It doesn't take away. Al is the emotional support for John McClane.
For John McClane says,
he also, when he's talking to Al, he's like, "How you feeling, mate? Pretty fucking unappreciated, if I'm honest with you." And he's like, "Look, I love you." So he's there just to keep John McClane going.
Plus, he's the one competent cop, isn't he?
Sorry,
he's the one competent cop. He always seems to know what's like. They're shooting the lights. Yeah. You know, he gets it before everyone else.
They're going for the lights.
And one thing for sure is, like, he knows entirely too much about fucking Twinkies. Like, there's a bit where John McClane eats a Twinkie, and then he literally lists, as far as I can tell, every single ingredient in a Twinkie. It's like, yeah, I know he's carrying a bit of timber. They make the point when he's buying the donuts. But to the point where he knows every single ingredient in a Twinkie, I was like, dude, you're probably pushing it a bit. But, you know, he gets away with it because, you know, I think that's the whole thing is, like, he's potentially this good cop, but he's quite jovial, likable kind of thing. But there's, like, maybe a tough guy in there. Like, right. So it makes it more dramatic when he has that, when he shoots Carl at the end. And even with, like, the music and the camera angle, the way it pans down, like the barrel of the gun to his face and the shock look, and it was like, oh my God. The way everyone looks, it's like everybody knew.
When he's about to shoot Argyle as well.
Al shot is unbelievable.
When he's about to shoot Argyle as well, he's like, no, that guy's with me. That's fine.
Oh, yeah. Once he shot one guy, he's like, I'm ready to start pulling the fucking trigger again now. Jesus Christ. Al's got a gun again. I know he told the story. You do know he shot 4 kids, right? He keeps telling me every single time, he had a ray gun. It's like, dude, you can't just keep shooting kids. It's ridiculous.
We're talking about last week when we covered Batman, we were talking about one of the best but worst lines ever when he said, shoot to kill, if you know what I mean. There's a line in this film that is up there as well. For me, I just checked my notes. And so you said about, like, when they were shooting the lights and stuff, and they send in the car and they blow the car up with the rocket launcher, and you think, my God, that was close. When he shot the rocket launcher to the car, like, that was literally about 5 feet away from the rocket launcher on the first floor. But then you had the it's pretty close. You had the SWAT officer just going, hang on, Rivers, that's an order. Like, what? That line just the most random line in the film.
It's a weird line.
Yeah. Hang on, Rivers, that's an order. Like,
I know. That whole...
I don't get it.
I don't get it. Like I said, like, all that scene with the cops, I don't know, man. It's somewhere between an action movie and a bit of a broad comedy, but I don't know. It comes good eventually, I guess. And like, I keep wanting to, like, jump to the end of the movie. That's where my head keeps going now. Yeah. Like, at some point we just got to get to the end of the movie because I feel like I'm going to keep waffling around and never get there. But it's like, again, it's like Hans Gruber. It's like, is that... Last week we did a podcast on Batman, and when the Joker falls off the building, it looks terrible. It looks terrible. And that was like 1989. It's like, watching it again, I was like, why does Hans Gruber falling off the building just look so much better than in any movie? Any movie ever. Like, it's the best. It is the best death scene, full stop. Obviously, part of it sold by the look on his face.
They didn't tell him when they were going to drop him.
Yeah. They said, on 3 we'll drop you, and they dropped him on 2. Yeah. So you said it, but like, you would think, like, you would see it, it'd be a matte painting, something like that. You would see the lines, but I was watching it again. I was like, it looks unbelievable. It looks like it was filmed yesterday. Actually, it looks better than because obviously most films now would be CG. And it's not even just Hans Gruber falling. It's even like the long shot. Like when you see the body falling and the guy says, "Oh, I hope that's not a hostage." It's like, it looks legitimately like a real, I assume somebody actually jumped off a building. Like, as a combination, it looks so goddamn convincing. It's so convincing. Sorry.
I always thought he got a shot off as well when he was falling. I always thought he got a shot off. But
no, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. He just like literally just falling. So as we've reached the end of the film, we've talked a lot about, we've jumped back and forth about everything. Before we move on to the next section.
And I'm struggling as well, because I want to talk, like, the fact that they built the top of the build. Like, I feel like it's one of those films I could talk about for hours. Well, one thing, right, sorry, before we move on, I just got to say one thing. The time, like, I've seen this film so many times, but in my head, did you have any issues with, like, the timing of the film? Like, in my head, I thought the shooting of the glass came much earlier in the film. And I thought him meeting Hans Gruber in the American accent was much later. And in fact, they're like right next to each other. They essentially follow each other, which I was really surprised by. And the last thing I'll say before... Oh, sorry.
I would say, for me, the timing never felt off. Like...
it's not that it felt off. It was more that I was just in my head.
It's about 3 or 4 hours that he's running around that building, isn't it? It's not long. It's only about 3 hours.
Yeah, where it's all set in one night.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not my issue with the time scale of the film. It was more just, when you remember, if you had said to me, it's like, oh, when do certain things happen in the film? I would have said the shoot the glass thing happened like 40 minutes into the film. Yeah. And I thought the meeting with Hans Gruber happened like right at the end. But instead, they happen right next to each other, and they're both like a good hour into the film. And it's just one of those like weird surprisings when you rewatch a film. Like, man, I thought that was at a completely different time in the film. But the last thing I'll say on that scene, and it's just because it's such an iconic scene that, shoot the glass and all that jazz, is watching it again, man. It's not far off Predator. Like, you can break a pane of glass with one bullet. They shoot the fucking shit out of that glass. Yeah. They literally, there's no reason for it. At one point, I'm like, how many rounds of ammunition has Carl and Hans got? They are just shooting for ages.
They don't even reload.
No, they're just shooting.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, that's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of Dutch and all the guys in Predator just shooting at the jungle. Yeah. Instead, they're shooting at glass. But yeah, so I just wanted to get off my chest. We need to move on. We need to move on, because otherwise this will go forever.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, before we move on to the next section, is there anything you wanted to cover last? But you've literally just jumped ahead of me.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
So yeah, I don't have... again, I could talk about this film for hours and hours, and I have talked about this film for hours. I've talked about this film for decades at this point. So
yeah, pretty much.
There's not much... so what I'll do, we'll move on. We've already covered it a little bit, but we'll move on to Legacy quickly.
Well, yeah, it's a bit of an odd one, because obviously Die Hard 2 is still a good film.
Yeah.
Die Hard 3, I think Die Hard 3 is a legitimately great film. I love Die Hard 3.
Oh, Die Hard,
it's also by...
For me, it is...
John McTiernan, again.
It's 1, 3, 2, 4, and that's it.
Oh, 100%.
That's the order that I put them in. But
and there's a big gap between them as well. It's like 1 is so easily the best, 3 is easily second. Like, there's no like blurry lines. There's no conversation for me to have. I'm exact same as you. It's 1, 3, 2, 4, 5. Yeah. There's no conversation. It's just in that order.
It's Indiana Jones as well, in regards to, you had 1, which is the great film. 2 was the follow-on. You've got to capitalize on what happened last year or whatever. So we'll set it at Christmas again, blah, blah, blah. Then you've got 3 where they've actually thought about it, and you've got a proper story, and it just moves everything forward again. So 2 is a serviceable
unique, doesn't it, 3?
2 is a serviceable sequel on both. On Indiana Jones and on this, 2 is a serviceable sequel. Mm-hmm. Although Temple of Doom is a prequel, but we'll get into that when we actually get to Indiana Jones. But
we'll get to that.
But like I said, A Vengeance, not only does it obviously bring back his Hans Gruber's brother, I never knew if he was his older or younger brother. I always thought he was his younger brother, but I'm pretty sure somebody said...
I've got to assume it's his...
Simon is his older brother.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think so. I think I read that somewhere.
I don't.
It doesn't
even matter.
But bringing Samuel Jackson in as well is a work of genius. Like, that guy is just...
Yeah, like Jeremy Irons and the character, the whole Simon thing, it's just not as he's not as good as Hans Gruber, but he doesn't have as much to work with.
No.
What makes the third film, rather than the interaction between Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman, essentially that's replaced with Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. That's what makes that film. And a big part of that film is New York. Like, New York feels like a character, but their back and forth is what makes that film special, rather than the connection to the bad guy, as it were.
Yeah.
But yeah, three goes off the rails. It doesn't keep its momentum. I think the final third is a little bit iffy. But yeah, I totally agree with you. But yeah, like you said, the legacy at this point, I'm like, I don't want to see a remake. I know they were talking about another sequel where it was gonna be simultaneously him now and him when he was like a young
in the 70s, when he was a rookie, and it's about how he's solving the same case. Yeah. Do you know what?
Yeah, I don't want to see that.
I think I'm done.
To be honest, I thought the Super Bowl advert was better than fucking God. That was actually, at least it felt like John McClane a bit.
I'm done with any more Die Hard sequels, if I'm honest with you.
What I compare it to now is Die Hard is the Terminator franchise. Like, Terminator 5, funny enough, was like, Die Hard 5 is to Terminator what Genesis is to Terminator, if that makes any sense. If you see what I mean. Like, those films were so bad, so horrendously shite, that they essentially killed the franchise. It proved it with Terminator, because Dark Fate is actually an okay movie, but nobody gave a shit anymore. That's why it bombed. It wasn't because it was a bad film. It was because Genesis was the straw that broke the camel's back. And it's the same with this. For me, with Die Hard, like, even after Die Hard 4, I'm like, I'm still kind of on board if you want to do something. After Die Hard 4, I'm like, just fucking kill it. I don't want to see a remake. I don't want to see a TV show. I don't want to see a sequel. So yeah, the legacy, you know, the movie hasn't been tarnished, the first one, or the first three. I can stick them off on their own.
Standalone, they are fantastic films. You can watch them and never get bored with those films, in my opinion. There's always something to watch. There's always something to enjoy with those films. Like, absolutely love them.
The weird thing is, and I guess this kind of leads into the like we always do a video game section, is you would think the legacy of Die Hard would lead to loads of video games, but it just totally hasn't. There was like the Die Hard game for the NES, which was a top-down game, came out in like 1990. I remember playing it. It was fine.
All right, yeah, I remember.
I think most people, when they think of Die Hard video games, they think of, bizarrely, what I think of is the Sega Saturn, because it had two Die Hard games. It had Die Hard Trilogy, which also came out on the PlayStation. And I think that's the one everyone remembers. Yeah. I think that's the one everyone remembers. And I remember the Die Hard Vengeance section of the game had you driving around New York in a taxi, and you could just run over pedestrians, and you'd have blood all over the windscreen. That's certainly how I remember it anyway. But at the same time, on the Sega Saturn, it was a game called, in Japan, it was called Dynamite Decker, and it was like a scrolling beat 'em up, and it was because they didn't have the rights in Japan. But funny enough, if you see the art for it, it's clearly Bruce Willis on the front. But over in the States and in Europe, it was actually called Die Hard Arcade. And not many people would have played it because, unlike me, most people didn't buy a Sega Saturn. It's a really good game, and it actually had a follow-up on Dreamcast, but they had lost the rights by then. So it was called Dynamite Cop, in line with the Japanese original. But that was a good game no one's played. But other than that, there was Die Hard Trilogy 2, which I don't think anyone remembers.
No.
And there was Die Hard Vendetta, which came out on GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. And bizarrely had John McClane fighting against Hans Gruber's son.
Yeah.
But it was shit.
I didn't mind. From what I played of Die Hard Vendetta, I didn't mind it because it just, I don't know, it felt all right. But for me, I know you're saying about Dynamite Decker. The Die Hard game is the Die Hard trilogy on the PlayStation. Yeah,
I think that's the quintessential game.
I played that constantly, and I loved it, because I loved that each.
Isn't it bizarre that that's the game though?
But I loved that each film was
had its own game.
Yeah, because Die Hard 1 was the third person travel the building. Die Hard 2 was the first person shoot them up in the it was
almost like a light gun game almost.
Yeah. And Die Hard 3 then was the driving game.
No, and it was really good for the time, and it was one of those games I remember everybody playing it. But then there's not really been, as I said, other than those games which I mentioned, which didn't really make much of a splash. And you just think, surely somebody wants to make a Die Hard game. And if someone was going to make a Die Hard game, this might be the first week where I agree with you, because you're going to say Naughty Dog. And I might actually agree, but the one thing you've got to be, and it's the problem, like if you wanted to do a proper Die Hard game, as in John McClane as he is, you can't have him like it's one of the issues with Uncharted. It's a term called ludonarrative dissonance. And what it means is, say if you take Uncharted, he's like this really, it's like charming character, witty and stuff. And he gets into fights and stuff. But during the game, he murders like what? 2,000-3,000 faceless, kind of bad guys.
You get that on TV shows like Sopranos, Sons of Anarchy, where you're following the gun-running murderers, and you're rooting for them.
In this though, it's not so much that you're rooting for the bad guys. He's supposed to be the good guy, and he gets into fights, but there's this weird disconnect in a lot of video games, especially action ones, where he's going to kill some people. He has a gun, but to make the video game work, he has to kill thousands of people. It's like when they did the Tomb Raider reboot.
Yeah.
At the start of the game, and it's a great game, by the way, they really wanted to establish the fact that Lara Croft was just starting off, and she was not this kind of ready-made adventurer. And there's this really dramatic scene. They deal with it really well, where she has to kill a deer.
Yeah.
She kills a deer, and it's really dramatic. And then when she kills her first, thug or whatever, kind of, not terrorist, but bad guy, let's just say bad guy, she kills him, and she's super upset. That lasts for about 5 minutes. She then kills another 7,000 bad guys. And
not even 5 minutes. She kills that guy. She's a bit upset, and then all of a sudden they're shooting from the top-down fence. So she picks up the gun and just goes for it.
She's like, "Oh well, I'm over this immediately." Yeah. And it is one of the issues with video games. So the only other thing I could think of was maybe something like what's it called? What's that game where there's A Way Out? The EA game where it's obviously not a co-op adventure, but something like that where it's more narrative based with a little bit of action.
Do you know what?
I don't know.
A Way Out feels like it could be good for like Dyad-esque, but do you know what? I'm going to agree with you. Naughty Dog probably, for a story narrative or for anything, they probably do it justice, in my opinion.
Yeah, and what I actually think is, don't go, because you think, quippy leads and stuff, you immediately think Uncharted.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to do original John McClane, I think, I'm not talking in terms of tone, but in terms of gameplay, I actually think The Last of Us would be closer to what the game should be, in terms of slightly more methodical, a bit more stealth-based.
Yeah.
So this is the week we're going to actually agree. We're going to say Naughty Dog should make a Die Hard game.
We should call this podcast Rob Likes Naughty Dog.
Yeah, we really should. So ludonarrative dissonance be damned. Naughty Dog make a Die Hard game and have John McClane kill 100 bad guys. Okay. That'll be fun.
So we got 2 more sections left to cover. We got music and facts. So before we move on to music, which is probably going to be a quick one, we'll cover some facts for this. Obviously, we've covered a couple already, but one of the big ones, if I remember rightly, was Richard Gere was in line to play John McClane.
Supposedly everybody was. It was going to be a Schwarzenegger vehicle. It was going to be Stallone. It was going to be Richard Gere. It was going to be Clint Eastwood. I had the rights to it for a while. It was going to be Clint Eastwood's. So, they basically offered it to everyone. And again, I don't think that's a dig on Bruce Willis. I think it was the fact that he just wasn't an action guy. He was the TV funny man, basically,
Yeah.
So, but saying that, how popular was that show in the 80s? Because it must have been massive, because he got a $5 million paycheck. It wasn't like, this is the last one
at this point.
Yeah, like it was proper megastar payday.
Well, they kept,
he was coming straight from TV. It was bizarre.
They loved their moonlighting, if I remember rightly. I never really caught it over here until later on.
No. I remember seeing the intro, but I was too young to get into it. It wasn't really my thing. Yeah. But he was the moonlighting guy, but obviously they felt strongly enough about it. Although saying that, they were either desperate or they really loved him, because they paid this huge pay packet to get him into the film. But then advertising had no faith in him initially, because if you see the initial posters that were released for this film, they were just in Nakatomi Plaza. Yeah. There was no Bruce Willis, and it was only after it started picking up steam that they wait a minute, I think people might like Bruce Willis in this. Let's get his fucking grill onto the poster. Which
you say Nakatomi. Obviously, this is one that probably everyone knows. It was the actual 20th Century Fox's headquarters before they moved into it. That they. Which is amazing. Yeah, just how convenient. It's like, we're about to move in, but you can shoot the movie there. You were on about his vest as well, or undershirt as they called it. In 2007, he donated it to the Bruce Willis donated that to the Smithsonian.
the Smithsonian. That you know you've made it.
Yeah.
If your vest is in the Smithsonian, you've totally made it. That's amazing.
The another one, like one of the best scenes is like when he's trying to go down the elevator shaft, and the gun breaks or he loses his grip and he tries to grab.
Yeah. He's using it to kind of the strap comes undone.
Yeah, but he misses the first one and he lands and grabs another one. Fingers of steel,
100%.
But that was a mistake. The stuntman was actually meant to grab the first one and just pull himself up, but he missed it.
And dropped another one.
And they kept it in because it looked good. But yeah.
And that is the thing. I didn't know that until after, because I was checking the facts after I watched the film.
Yeah.
And funny enough, when I was watching it, I was like, man, that looks great. I was like, how did they get him to fall, bounce off the one wall, and then land on the other one and keep his grip? And it was like just by fluke. It was just happened by accident. Like he messed up but grabbed the second one and they just kept it in the film. And it looks great. Like that whole scene. Again, I just love John McClane's reactions. Like he's never in control. Like that scene, like he looks so relieved. And one of my favorite shots of John McClane in the film is after he jumps off the building, which is it still looks so good. The building blows up, the top of the building blows up behind him. And obviously he has to jump through the window. So he bounces back, he shoots the glass. And then whatever he's got it connected to, the hose pipe thing, falls down and it's dragging him out of the window.
Yeah.
And he gets it untucked at like the last second. And I love the look on his face, just totally sells you on the idea of a guy who thought he was about to die. He's just like, oh, holy shit. Oh my God. I nearly got pulled out the goddamn window. This is ridiculous. But he does that so well all the way through the film. Just that look on his face was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I survived. So good. So good.
Just looking at, there's not many more like actual other than like, ones we've already covered about like Alan Rickman's first film, stuff like that. The only other one, Clint Eastwood originally owned the rights to Nothing Lasts Forever, which was the book.
Yeah. Well, that's why he was going to star in it,
and he was going to star in the early '80s. Yeah. So
Well, and one of the other things, one of the bizarre things, was initially because the book is funny enough what they're pretending to be was terrorists, and it was actually John McTiernan who said when he started filming it, he's like, listen, terrorists are no fun. It's like, we need to make this more fun. And what is fun is robbers. So he's like, oh, we'll make them thieves instead of terrorists. And in the book, and initially, they were just like, it was supposed to happen over 4 nights. He's like, no, we'll make this over 1 night. He wanted it to be really snappy and it to feel like a popcorn movie. And that is what it does.
It was meant to be his daughter as well. And it was like an oil company, wasn't it? So the terrorists were taken on because the oil company...
Yeah.
And it was like I said, it was meant to be his daughter, and it was meant to be over 4 nights, and they were actual terrorists.
Oh, sorry. One last thing, right? This isn't a fact at all. It's just because we did mention her, so this is completely off topic. But do you understand what's going on with his marriage to Holly? Because I have no fucking idea. I'm sorry. I've opened a can of worms very late in the podcast.
Other than the fact that she left to do something that he didn't believe she could do. Like,
are they split up? I don't know. Like right. Say if your wife goes, she's like, oh, well, I've got to move out because I'm working in LA. So, all right, I assume he's still working in New York. It's like, okay, you're going to go out, you'll move there, and we'll sort something out. Then she goes and like takes her. She doesn't take her name because Japan or something like that.
Yeah.
I never really got that. I mean. And the other thing is, I can't get my head around the idea.
She also said to him, I've got the spare room made up for you because I missed you. Like, I've missed you, but stay in the spare room. Don't actually, like...
I was never clear on where they are in their marriage.
I wrote it in my notes as well. How fickle is she? Like,
mega
taken, like, she wants him to stay in the spare room. She's taken her maiden name. But at the end, when she introduces herself to Al, well, this guy's bleeding, like, to rescue me. I'm now McClane again.
I mean, it's the least she could do, Mike. Yeah. I mean, look at the state of him. It's like, all right, I'll take your name again, in fairness. But I like I said, I was watching the film and I was trying to, like, you do get it occasionally with these 80s haircuts. So I was like, it's such a bad haircut on Holly Gennaro that I can't tell if she's attractive or not. The haircut is so all-encompassing that that's all I can see. There might be a very beautiful woman there, but I'm like, I can't get beyond the fucking hair. I just can't see it.
That haircut should be like on the lead singer of not Lynyrd Skynyrd, like I don't know, an 80s metal, a hair metal band.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
It's very much like Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet.
Yeah,
it's one of those bad boys. But yeah. So
as you say, Bon Jovi, the music for this film.
Yeah, I don't think. I think the score by Michael Kamen, funny enough, this is a guy who also did Robin Hood and Lethal Weapon. Especially with Lethal Weapon, there are similarities. I think the score's underrated. I think it's one of those ones. It's probably more iconic than I don't think you'd necessarily be able to hum the songs or the score off the top of your head. But I think as soon as you hear it, you're like, that's Die Hard. That is Die Hard. 100%.
Have you noticed what travels through this film as well? And I never really picked up on it a lot because you don't until you're watching it for like a critical view. Ode to Joy pops up in this film in different places, different tones, different
like when they're opening the vaults and stuff.
Yeah, and it's used really well. Like you had an upbeat version of it when they go into the when you first go to the Christmas party. Then like there's little bits running through the film, and it's just like it's more dark in tone. There's still Ode to Joy, but it feels a bit darker when it's just John McClane. It is used very well.
I think they use it very well during what is otherwise slightly uninspiring. I think they knew the vault didn't look great when it was opening. And it's one of those things we haven't covered. I could spend a whole episode talking about the mystery of 650 million in negotiable bearer bonds.
Or why he had to crack one code and then a laser drill on
the other side. I don't know. But I think they knew. It's like, dude, this doesn't look very impressive. So what we'll do, we'll add Ode to Joy in the background. And we'll also, from nowhere in particular, we'll have a light breeze blowing on Alan Rickman's face as it's opening. You can see his hair flicker. I'm like, where's that wind coming from, dude? It was just like, all right, dude, we've got to make this fucking... Like, we spent so much of the movie opening this vault, and now it's like, dude, the vault's not very big, it doesn't look very cool. All right, we'll add Ode to Joy, we'll have a little bit of wind, we'll change all the lighting like they do. It's like there's light coming from everywhere. It's kind of like that scene with Robin Hood where he survives the attack, Kevin Costner, and he comes up over the top and there's just lighting from below. And it's like, where is the sun under his ass? Like, it makes no, like, it's just all about the drama. But yeah, like you said, the choice of music in this, like, I love the score, I love the use of Ode to Joy. And I think their use of both what would have been a contemporary Christmas song and a classic Christmas song is just perfect.
Yeah.
Like, and one thing I'll say is, how is This Is Christmas by Run DMC? How is that just not on the Christmas playlist? Like, you never hear it anywhere else other than this film. It's a fucking belter. It's an absolute belter.
Yeah, it's usually on VH1, isn't it? Isn't it Christmas at Hollis Avenue or something like that? I think it's called.
No, that's a different one.
Is because they play both.
That's
of them. I'm sure. Do they?
Well, no, I just remember This Is Christmas is the one that he plays in the car with our guy. Yeah. It's like when you say, "Oh, can you put my Christmas song? This is Christmas music, whatever." Like that. That's like great. I know there's another one, but that's the one I like. When I think of this film, I think of that in the car, and then I think of the classic. What's called at the end over the credits. Let Us Know, which is perfect. So yeah, and just be clear, it is a Christmas movie. To sum up, it's a Christmas. Okay, so.
We'll end it on It's a Christmas Movie. The last thing
is a Christmas movie.
Before we go on to
Does it hold up?
Your choice for next week, what we need to do is we need to actually give it the score, and would we recommend it still to this day?
Yes. It's easy. It's easy for both of us. I mean, there's no... I can answer for you. The answer is yes, and it's a 5-star film. 100%. It holds up in every respect.
It's all day a 5-star film.
And it's as good as it's ever. Like, the action scenes hold up. Like, some of the stuff we were saying about how it's 80s, but again, it's not 80s and it looked like it's just, remember weird shit people did in the 80s, like smoking. This film feels totally contemporary in terms of like how it's shot.
I can't imagine anyone...
Everything about it.
I can't imagine anyone watching this film now who hasn't seen it before and not liking it. And that may be a bit of optimism.
No, you're right. But no, it's not. It's not. It's like, I really am...
It's out. It's up there. It is up there in the annals of history. It is.
It is. And
fantastic.
One thing I'm trying to do with this podcast when we go back and watch these films is really, as much as I'm enjoying them and stuff, I really am trying to watch them with a critical eye, and not just be kind of washed over by nostalgia. Oh, I just love Die Hard. I'm really trying to watch it and be like, all right, is this still good now? And the answer is yes. It's perfectly paced, it's beautifully shot, it's fantastically acted, and it's got a great script. So yes, 5 and 5.
When we discussed doing this podcast, we discussed about the 80s. This was always going to be the one where there was never going to be any disagreement and any and ahhing about, did I like it? Did I like it again?
No.
Constantly.
There's a very small number of films where I'm pretty confident that we'll be on the, without talking about beforehand, we'll be on the same page.
Yeah.
This is one of them. Eventually we'll inevitably get to Back to the Future. I think that might be another one.
Yeah.
There's a small number of films, but yeah, this is definitely one of them. And I stand by the fact that this is still probably the greatest action movie of all time.
So in summary, if you haven't watched it, please watch Die Hard. If you have watched it, and
sort yourself out. If you haven't seen Die Hard, for fuck's sake.
And if you're
listening to this podcast, Jesus Christ, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, spoiler alert. If you have watched it, watch it again because it's
really good.
Yeah. The last thing to do then, before we wrap up, the last thing
next week
is
my choice.
Yeah,
that's my choice. So we've obviously gone for a massive hit, one of the big obvious ones with Die Hard. So next week I'm looking to a bit of a shifting gears. We've done a few family films, but we haven't done what I would consider more of a comedy. So and I guess a lesser known film, but certainly one I grew up with and loved when I was younger. But I think it'll be interesting going back and reviewing this film. I'm going for The Burbs. So nice. The Burbs next week. I think that's an interesting one for people to go and watch. I think there's enough people out there who haven't seen it, and there will be a lot of people who maybe watched it back in the 80s or early 90s, haven't seen it for a long time. We're talking, this is Tom Hanks when he was still very much a comedic actor. And it's I guess a horror comedy is what you would call it. Is it? Just about a horror comedy. But
I suppose so. I mean, it has the horror element. Movie. It has the darkness in it. Definitely, it's Corey Feldman.
It is what it is
as well. So
it's a suburban comedy. Let's just put it that way. So if you haven't watched it, please try and give it a go before the podcast next week. But this has been awesome. So The Burbs next week, but Die Hard, man. Die Hard's the best.
Before we wrap up, we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hey You Guys 80s. And also, if you'd like to drop us an email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com for any reviews, any recommendations, anything like that, please feel free to drop us a message. We're going to end it there, and we're going to say we've been Rob and Liam. Thank you very much for listening.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye now.
Hey, you guys!